Hello there again. This is Demonic Sweaters, and today I'm going to show you how to master an album in Audacity, which is a free audio editor. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's one of the best that you can download. It does so much. It's really great. I can't stress how good Audacity is and how much I use it for almost, everything. I mean, as far as mastering, I've even done full-blown multi-track recordings in it, which you can do as well. It's not as good as a regular DAW for that, but it's still really good. And for mastering, I prefer it over everything. I used to use SoundForge, I used to use Wavelab, but now I use Audacity and I get better results than using those other two programs. So what I'm going to do, first thing you're going to need is Audacity, obviously. And then what you're going to need is to download, if you're on the Audacity webpage, you're going to download these plugins. They are the LAD SPA plugins. If you're running Linux, you most likely already have these, depending on which distribution of Linux you're using. If you're using Windows or Mac, you will need to install those. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the first song. Let's see, Fuji. This one is pretty cool. Okay, so when you open it up in Audacity, this is what you see. And you can see here, this song is pretty, it looks like a standard waveform, but it's pretty low. So if we go ahead and just play here in the middle somewhere. I basically have like 3 or 4 steps that I go through to make this work. The first thing that I use is we go to Effect, and then I'm going to click on Amplify. Now this Amplify plugin for Audacity, this comes with Audacity, just the standard version of Audacity. And what this does is really cool. You don't have to touch anything. When you click Amplify, it automatically figures out how low that waveform is, and puts the number in there automatically to get that thing up to 0 dB. So all we're going to do is we're just going to click Amplify, then click OK. Now, this is not mastered yet. This is just the first step. So what we are looking at now is it's going to be a little louder. But as you can see, it still has a lot of room here. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is go back to Effect. And now we're going to actually use some EQ on here. Because this, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, now another thing about the Audacity EQ is it also has an automatic feature where it basically will hear stuff that's happening in the song, and it will try to suggest what settings it thinks you should use. And I'm actually going to agree with this, because this song is, the bass is the very low bass, like 20 hertz. That will kill your masters. One of the biggest problems people have with mastering is a lot of times they'll try to push the ultra low end, and that will make it actually not sound as loud, because if you're pushing that low end too high, lows reach 0 dB quicker than any other frequency in the whole spectrum of sound. So what you want to do is you want to have that, if you want to base your recording, you're not going to really achieve that by pumping 20 hertz. That's just going to make it sound bad. So don't do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut out the 20 hertz frequency. If you look here, the curve in Audacity's EQ is really cool, because it shows you, like, when you use, if it comes up here and it's set on draw curves, that's kind of a pain in the ass. So you can switch it to graphic EQ, and you can adjust these little sliders here to go to be the settings you want to use. If we move this one up and down, you'll see how this spikes way up here. But if you look at this green line, the green line represents the actual frequencies that are going to be affected when you change that EQ setting. So let's go ahead and pull that back down. So if we see here, we're going to have a nice low cut and then a slight boost at 100, between 100 and 80 hertz, around there. That actually is the better range for if you want to have a bassy recording when you are mastering 100 to 80 hertz or 80 to 100 hertz. That's going to come through. It's going to appear bassier to the listener, and it's going to enable you to actually make the recording louder. So let's go ahead and click OK on this. And now we'll see that went down a little bit again. So in order to be, we want these effects to have the correct effect on what we're using. So we're going to go back to effect again. We're going to go back to amplified. I'm going to go ahead and see it's actually above 0 now. So we're going to click OK, and that's going to pull it down where it needs to be. Now the next step, sometimes depending on what you're going to do, some songs you'll want to do this. Not all the songs. I don't do it on every single song, but I think on this one I'm going to use it, which is the compressor. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and make some changes here. If you look at threshold, this fader will have a lot of effect on your sound, basically because the lower this slider, the lower volume or the lower parts of the sound will be affected more easily by the compressor. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this down around minus 19 dB. Noise floor, you don't need to touch that. Ratio 2 to 1. I think I'm going to raise this a little bit. We're just going to go to 2.5 to 1. Attack time and release time, you can leave those. But what you do want to do here is check the box where it says compress based on peaks. And then we're just going to click OK. Now that's looking a lot better, right? So let's go ahead and listen to it, hear how it sounds. Okay, so that's much better than what it was, but it still needs some work. One of the things I heard there when I was listening back to it is it still has a lot of low-end rumble to it. So that is going to still cause problems for us to make this track get as loud as it can be. So we're going to, first before we mess with that low end, what I'm going to do is undo the things that I just did. So I can do Control-Z, that just undid the compressor. And now I'm going to do Control-Z again and undo that EQ. Actually, no, that was the amplify. So we're going to do Control-Z one more time, and that undid the EQ. So I'm going to go back here. I mean, I'd rather do it like this than go and keep applying EQs back on the over and over again on the file, because that will deteriorate the sound if you keep applying effects to them over and over again. So rather than do that, go back to the original file if you have to, and just start over. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to EQ, wherever it is. All right, EQ. Oh, equalization, duh. Okay, so I'm going to take down this little guy because I really don't think it needs any boost there. And I'm going to take out some more of the ultra lows. Some of you may be seeing this and be like, what is he doing? But believe me, that much bass, you really don't need it. It's not going to sound good, and it's just going to make your track sound weak. So go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to go back to Effect, go to amplify again. Go back and do our compressor again. Now, some of you may be asking, why don't I listen to it before I do the compressor? Partly because I can't really make the decision like without hearing it processed a little bit more to where it's going to sound like after the compression it sounds more like how I want it to sound. So basically without hearing what the compressor does to the EQ, I can't really make my decision on how much I like the EQ until I apply the compression. So I go ahead and select the compressor. It remembers all the settings you put in there the last time. Just go ahead and click OK. Alright, go ahead and we're going to listen to a little bit of this. And I'm going to start it kind of in the middle here where the drums already are in and everything. So, okay, this is much, much better than it was, but it's still, we can get this a lot louder. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use another effect, and this is one of the ones that you installed when you installed the LADSPA plugins. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the hard limiter plugin. And if you just press the H on your keyboard after you select effect, it'll jump right to that if you're in Windows. I don't know about Linux. I think you could have to scroll down to it, but I could be wrong. If you click on I'm going to go ahead and click on hard limiter. Now this plugin is basically what will make your recording very, very loud. But you have to be careful with it because you can also distort it. So what we're going to do, it's a little bit of trial and error. But what we're going to do is first we're just going to go ahead and I usually start this dB limit. I put it somewhere around 4.8, somewhere like that. That's a good starting point. Sometimes it's right away, but we'll see. So that's all you need to do. You just lower that down to minus 4.8, click OK. Okay, now if you see the waveform has these, it's basically been brick walled and it just stops at negative 4.8 dB. So that's really not going to make it any louder, but what that does is that gives us a lot of headroom. So we can go back to Effect, we go back to that Amplify plugin, select that, now we go OK here. See, it already automatically selected 4.8. Just click OK. Now look at that. That is one serious waveform. Let's go ahead and listen to it. Okay, now that is pretty darn good. If you look at this waveform, it looks kind of insane. Some people would look at that and be like, "Oh my God, where are the dynamics?" But honestly, if you want your stuff to be as loud as other stuff that's out there, that's kind of how it looks. If you zoom in, you start to see there is some dynamics there, but it's going to be pretty brick walled. I mean, that's just how it is. That's how 99% of the recordings that you hear on the internet are. So if you want to be competitive, that's what you do. So this one looks pretty good. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with that for this song. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up a second song in this same copy of Audacity. So in order to do that, first let's go ahead and save this. Now, once that's been saved, we can go here to File, and we're not going to go to Open because that will open up a whole other window of Audacity. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Import and then go to Audio. And I'm going to go ahead and select my second track, Loopy Poopy. and you'll see that it copied that track to a second track in Audacity. So we don't really want that because both songs will play at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just highlight it and press Control X, and that will actually cut it. And then I'm going to place my cursor up here and click at the end of this waveform, and then just Control V. And now that pastes that waveform at the end of that file. And this one already looks like it's pretty loud already, but we'll go ahead and work with it anyways. It probably can use a little bit of push still. So what we're going to do now is we're going to delete this imported empty track and go ahead and save it. Now here's a very cool thing, and a lot of people don't know this about Audacity. What we're going to do next, we're going to go to Tracks, and we're going to go Add New, and then go to Label Track. Now, this is basically what is going to allow us to export these files into different files once we get it all done. Okay, so go ahead and click, let's go ahead and zoom in. We're going to click at the start of our first wave here. Once we're clicked in there, we're going to go back to Tracks, and then we're going to go to Add Label at Section. So let's call this, the first song is called Fuji. So let's go ahead and type that in there. Now we're going to scroll over to where the second song starts, where that is. It's right here. And we're going to click in the label track or on the regular track, doesn't matter. But just, you'll see that little, I don't know if you noticed that little yellow flash when I clicked there. It basically tells you that you're clicking at the end of the one wave. It's kind of hard to see. Let me click out and do it again so you can see it. That little yellow flash. So that means you're in the right spot. If you're unsure, you can just zoom way in and take a look. But that's where the second song starts. So we're going to go ahead and select that, and then we're going to go back to Tracks again. And then we're going to go Add Label at Selection. Type in the title. Looby Booby. Okay, so that's all we're going to do for that for right now. We'll get back to that here in a second, but go ahead and save it. Now, if you click this little button, this one right here, where it says Fit Project, if you highlight over it, it should, if you don't highlight, or if it doesn't say that, it's just the magnifying glass with the little arrows pointing at the line. Just click that, and that will fit both tracks into one song, or into one waveform, rather. Or one window. God, I can't speak today. So one window, and you'll fit both of your waves in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on this second track. Another thing I want to mention is when you look at the waves in Audacity, the inner, what I like, one way that I could tell like how loud something is going to be is by looking at this inner waveform, you know, the lighter blue area. That, of course, isn't, you know, that's not showing you how loud the actual track is, but you can get a good idea as to how loud it is perceived by the listener by looking at that blue inner, you know, the light blue inner wave display. So if we look at this second one, we can see that that's lower. So first thing we're going to do on this one is just double click it, and that will highlight that whole second track that we did. And first we're going to go through that same process that we just did on the first track. We can go to Amplify. Go ahead and play it. Okay, and we're going to go and do a lot of the same things that we just did on the first one. So let's go back to equalization. Now, one thing that I want to mention too is the equalization plugin It's kind of weird. I don't quite understand sometimes. Like, it seems like it remembers the last thing you do, but then adds a little bit to it. I don't know. It's kind of weird sometimes. So I don't know what we're going to need if that is necessary to have that 100 hertz boost. And I also don't think this one is quite as bassy as the other one, so I'm not going to pull out quite as much. We'll go ahead and click OK. Let me go back to Amplify. This one as well, I don't really think it needs compression, but what I do think it needs from looking at it, I just zoom in to make sure. So this one actually looks like it's got a little bit of DC offset. And what that means is basically the top, if you look at the top part of the wave, you'll notice it is actually not reaching the very top of the display area in Audacity, whereas the bottom actually is. So that will cause you problems and make it harder to get the song as loud as you want. So in order to fix that, it's very easy. We just go to Effect, and we're going to go to DC Offset Remover. And that was another one that you had to download in that link that I showed you in the beginning of the video. So let's go ahead and run that. There's no settings, it just does it. And it really didn't seem like it did that much, which is odd because that usually works pretty well. But it could be because there's a, oh, I see why. There are a few little, if we zoom in close here, there's a couple of little bits of waveform that are reaching the top there. And so it's just making it appear that it's got DC offset, but in reality it actually doesn't. But if your track does, you can run that tool and it will remove it. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out a little bit. Let's highlight this again. I don't think this track needs any compression because it already sounds like I put a decent amount of compression on it when I did the mix. So what I'm going to do is just go straight to the hard limiter. And this one is not nearly as quiet as the original one was, so I'm not going to go that far. I'm only going to do, let's do 3. And again, this kind of thing, I've just gotten good at guessing because I've done it so many times. But you know, you generally, unless your song is like insanely dynamic, you're not generally going to go past like 5, -5 is usually the general rule of thumb. Otherwise, you're going to get distortion. But let's go ahead and, you know, we'll just go through this. All right. So now let's go back to Effect. Go back to Amplify. There we go. So let's go ahead and zoom back out. Now if we look at these inner waveforms, they are actually a lot closer in size. You know, you're not going to be perfect because obviously songs have different dynamics and different loudness to them, but this is a good way to just at seeing them to be able to tell if these two songs are going to like sound equally as loud to one another when somebody is listening. And what you can do in Audacity, let's go ahead and save it. You can kind of just click in this top bar area on each song and just go back and forth, and you can hear them back, you know, just like the loudest part of each song back to back, and then you can compare them. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, now we have those first two songs pretty much done. Let's go ahead and import our third song. So we're going to go back to File and then Import. and Crystal Island Mix 2. Now this one looks like it's going to be pretty tough, so that's good. We'll go ahead and select this again like we did the other one. Copy it, actually cut it. Select the end of the second song. Paste it in there. Go back down here, delete this empty track. Click in the label area at the line where the two tracks are. Go ahead and enter in our label. We'll go to tracks, add label selection. And I'm going to go ahead and just do this one and then come back to that. No need to show you all this again. So I'll pick up the video after I get that song ready, and I'll move on to the next step. Alrighty, so now we're ready to export all of our songs to FLAC files, and we'll get them all exported all at the same time and all with tags. So the way to do this, what we do is we go to File, and first we're going to go to Edit Metadata. And I'd already entered mine in here, but what you're going to do is you're going to put in your artist name, your album title, and if you want to put the year, genre, and comments, you can do that as well. But leave the track number and the track title blank. Again, leave track number and track title blank. Once you have all that entered in, go ahead and click OK. After that, go to File, and then Export Multiple. Alright, and I already have FLAC files selected here. The folder you select by clicking Choose, like anything else. Split files based on labels. That is already selected, and that's what you want, because what that's going to do is create individual files based on every one of those labels that we created in the label track. And here where it says Name Files, select the second option, which is numbering before label / track name. You can do the first option too, but I like this one a little bit better because it makes things easier as far as like if you're going to upload to Bandcamp or things like that, because it puts a number in the file name. So that way everything will be in the correct order when you upload it. So once you have that selected, just click Export. And you'll see here that it popped up with the tag already and the correct song title and track number. Click OK, and it'll do that for every single one. You can disable that in the previous screen, but I like to look at it just to make sure everything's right. And then once you export the FLAC, see it's doing all three of them in a row. And it automatically writes all the FLAC files, puts the correct tags, puts them all separate, and titles them correctly with numbers before the song name, and it's good to go. You're all set. And there we have it. And this is the files that created: 01-fuji.flac, 02-loopybooby.flac. And if we were to go in and open up that file and say VLC, let's go ahead and do that. It would have the correct tags on it. So let's go to Open File. And wherever it is, where is it? And there you go. You can see it has Fuji, the duration there, artist name, and album name. So that's how you master a complete project using Audacity and export them all at the same time with tags. So I hope you've learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to post a comment down below. Sorry there was some sound issues early on where I was playing back some of the files and you couldn't actually hear anything, but hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. I don't think it affected the lesson in the file or in the video at all. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you want, and thanks again. Good luck making music.